This script was a bit of a monster to write compared to my normal ones. I, at one point, had over 100 tab markers in this book, indicating things I hoped to mention in the script. But the main struggle, oddly enough, because of how much information there is in this book, was how to organize it properly. What I finally settled on was dividing it up kind of by character at first and inserting the more environmental aspects in at the end. I think this is the best way I could have organized it, and I hope it flows well instead of feeling like just a list of facts. Ralph has worked at Freddy's for a minimum of 22 months, which we know because he's been Employee of the Month 22 times. But it's probably a lot longer, as he talks about the bite of 83 as if it's a memory he has, not a story he's heard. He was also around for the bite of 87. He's recorded a bunch of training messages, which we already knew, and they are screened and scheduled to be sent out by management, not by him. He's also looked into potential employees for management, interviewing Bronwen himself. He's aware that things are pretty messed up at Freddy's, but he's kind of in denial about it, which is likely a coping mechanism. He isn't really in a position to change anything, and he's somewhat afraid of what management might do if he tried, considering the kind of things they're willing to cover up. He has a daughter to think about and doesn't want to risk something happening to her or preventing him from being able to properly care for her. His goal seems to be to just keep his head low and do his job until he can make it out. He wants to give his daughter the best possible life, one without the risk of losing her father to a dancing bear. He's one of only a handful of good parents seen throughout the franchise. Being a parent himself has given him a soft spot for kids. This makes me think he's probably not aware of the kids being trapped in the suits, or even necessarily killed inside the restaurant. He likely would have gotten out sooner, and possibly in a more drastic fashion if he was. He does know some kids went missing, but he can't bring himself to believe it was anything more to do with Freddy's than it just being the location they disappeared. We can infer this because he calls the idea of it being connected to Freddy's a rumor, but when he finds the newspaper article from the disappearance, he's not surprised. He feels pity for the kids and their parents. And he doesn't connect the obvious indications of a haunting to the incident. In fact, he's caught off guard at the sight of human teeth in the Bonnie head on page 63, and also on 222 when he realizes that the animatronics are just kids. He is aware that the animatronics are dangerous, however, with a line on 104 about part of his job being to keep them in, alongside pages 57 and 44, where it's mentioned that he refuses to bring his daughter here. He even gets pretty close to the truth on page 192 when he ponders the idea of the animatronics having souls. Despite his awareness that the place isn't safe, and that management covers up anything bad that happens, he feels compelled to see things through to his proper quit date. One could argue that it's a matter of stupidity or pride, or that it shows dedication and resolve. The only truly negative trait we see from Ralph is that he rationalizes the negative actions, or inactions, of the company. Even then, that could be seen as a coping method or self-preservation. Ralph is, by and large, a good person who's trying to do the right thing by his daughter. He wants to leave a message for the next night guard with the truth, but knows that if he did, they'd never hear it. He's raised his daughter quite well so far, and he's even squeamish about blood. I think that early theories about Phone Guy being part of the more sinister side of things have been completely disproven here. Ralph is even willing to return and risk his life after Bronwen reveals the truth to him, just to protect others. If he accidentally fries the animatronics in the process, he feels real remorse over it. This man is no killer, and had he known the extent of what happened to the missing children, he'd probably have done something about it much earlier. Ralph's daughter, Coppelia, is incredibly mature and responsible. This goes doubly so when you remember that she's only 11, although she'll turn 12 next month. This puts her birthday in either November or December, more likely December. Coppelia has a great relationship with her dad. She loves him and he loves her. She comes across as intelligent, capable, and resourceful. In the event Foxy breaks down the front door, she shows she's brave enough to fight, and smart enough to change tactics when realizing she can't win. She also seems quite optimistic and shows a willingness to compromise. She doesn't inherently distrust the animatronics, but she doesn't like them either. If they aren't threatening her when they show up, as shown on page 205, she seems to be cordial with them and calls her dad to let him know. 233 reveals, however, that they do make her uncomfortable, and that she has been to Freddy's once, when she was 7, and she hated it. The visit was followed by a week of nightmares. It's interesting to note that, if she's only 11 at the time of FNAF 1, it's not unlikely that she's still alive as of Security Breach. The canon ending has Ralph dying on the job, which management likely covers up, leaving Coppelia unaware of what happened to her father, and without his warning not to come to Freddy's. Ralph even mentioned that Bronwen reminded him of Coppelia, and knowing Bronwen's actions, is it possible Coppelia ever started looking into Freddy's? Bronwen is a bit of an enigma. Her characterization is that of a driven investigative journalist who wants to reveal the truth about Freddy's in order to keep people safe, no matter the cost. Her entire existence feels like a curveball. I suppose in the canon ending, Ralph never even checks her message, but that doesn't mean she wasn't real. Typically, the way we address alternate routes or endings in a FNAF game is that if our main character made those choices, then those things would have happened. I imagine we should stick to the same methodology here. This means that during FNAF 1, Bronwen's body is probably in that suit. Bronwen still left the voicemail, although, as mentioned by Ralph, management screens the messages, so the next guard wouldn't have heard it either. The message also disappeared after Ralph listened to it, if we choose that route, and I'm unsure whose doing that was. It could have been management screening it remotely and deleting it, but it also could have been Bronwen's doing somehow. Bronwen's mental fortitude is shown several times, but most obviously in the star ending, where she's able to push through the onslaught of "it's me" on repeat in Ralph's mind, to let him know that he did succeed and his daughter is safe. Bronwen was able to do this because she's in that suit, the golden Freddy suit, the one that stumbles into the party room on 108 covered in blood, the one that seems to be in a different position backstage every time Ralph notices it, the one he says is from the Fredbear era. She's there now, part of that suit, that entity, and, canonically, her sacrifice was in vain, despite the level of research she did, even to the point of finding Ralph's home phone number and figuring out that it was Jeremy specifically in the Bonnie suit, and probably who was in the other suits too. It just wasn't enough. Management will have covered up her death as well. Management for Freddy's is pretty much exactly how we expected them to be. Uncaring, neglectful, and willing to strong-arm their employees into silence and subservience. They don't even allow their staff to give each other potentially life-saving advice behind closed doors, as Ralph acknowledges the need to speak almost in code in an attempt to warn his future replacement through the FNAF 1 phone messages. It's no wonder Ralph wants out. I'd want out too if part of my job description was bleaching a bloody floor to cover up a crime scene. The way Ralph thinks about them, it seems, if there's no evidence, it may as well not have happened, is management's motto. He's even aware that if he dies here, his daughter will never know why he didn't come home. And that's probably exactly what happened. It's odd to me that Dave seems so nonchalant about the animatronics and everything, and also that he's apparently been around as long as he has. The dialogue we get from him seems gruff and irritable, but that's to be expected of someone woken up in the middle of the night by a coworker that shouldn't even have his phone number. He doesn't say anything particularly suspicious, but it is possible that he could be William Afton. It feels unlikely, but it's the same alias used in the novel trilogy, and it would explain how he's able to survive being the maintenance guy, and why the bodies haven't been found and reported. I just can't imagine Afton getting Employee of the Month 17 times. The animatronics are clearly haunted, though we have even more evidence of animatronic programming being able to override the will of the spirits inside. Despite the animatronics having practically already escaped on night 6, when Ralph starts a showtime routine, they're forced to return to their stage. Their characterization is different than what we've seen before as well, although it may have just been the lack of characterization and motivation. They gave off this vibe of being almost mindless, killing machines. But now in this book, they show their intelligence and that they have a clear goal in mind, making all of their actions feel much more deliberate. Chica and Carl set traps, and Carl can lie dormant in order to wait for an opportunity to attack Coppelia when she's alone. Chica, who is the one that attacked Bronwen in the party room, remembers the blood she left there, and can conclude from its absence and presence of mopping supplies that Ralph was there. She can then follow Ralph's wet footprints and find him hiding under a table. Chica seems either possessive or protective of Carl, and if you use him as a distraction when she's about to kill you, she'll turn away and follow him down the hall. She cares much more about keeping track of Carl than about killing you. Carl doesn't seem to be a part of Chica, and he can act independently of her. When Ralph tosses him down the hallway, he hops away from Chica instead of toward her. His only real actions being to run around or bite people really makes me feel like this could be Susie's dog. She loved the dog in life, was heartbroken when he died, and even willing to follow a stranger for a chance at getting him back. It makes sense she'd retain those traits in death. In a later section of this video, I'll go into detail about an incident that gives us practically confirmation that Susie inhabits Chica, as if we even needed more evidence for that at this point. Chica is also willing to work with others and helps Foxy check the cameras in the office to look for Ralph after Foxy opens the door to allow her in. And yes, that means they know how to use doors and to check the camera feeds in order to find and kill people. Foxy seems to be a bit more playful with killing than Bonnie, Chica, or even Freddy. He seems a bit crueler than Bonnie and Chica as well, although it makes sense that he'd be angrier having been locked away possibly since the Fredbear era, given that the ticket his minigame gives out is the Fredbear's Family Diner ticket. Foxy was separated from the others and forced to sit in the dark, in silence, for years, forced to experience the world through the tiny gap between his curtains, and probably growing angrier and more miserable the entire time. He's not entirely without compassion, however. Despite being active and in the office, he, along with the other animatronics, choose not to attack Ralph when he calls his daughter on night 5. Foxy is the one who strikes the deal with Ralph that if he stays, they'll leave his daughter alone. Bonnie has a very interesting interaction with Ralph at the end of night 2. On night 2, Ralph notices on the cameras that Bonnie's head is detached and lying on the floor in front of the stage. He spends the night trying to reattach Bonnie's head without being killed by the other animatronics. If he reattaches it incorrectly, Bonnie kills him. But if he attaches it properly and makes it back to the office, Chica is already at the door on the right and Bonnie is approaching the door on the left. You can choose for Ralph to close the door on the left or the right, and if he fails to lock Chica out, she'll kill him. But if he locks Chica's door, Bonnie approaches on the left and just stares at Ralph. Bonnie has ample opportunity to kill him, and would on any other night, but not this night. In return for Ralph reattaching his head, Bonnie spares him. This only lasts one night, however, as Bonnie will absolutely kill Ralph on night 3. In fact, I'm fairly sure that Bonnie is responsible for Ralph being locked in the supply closet on page 97. Whether this was specifically intended to kill him, I'm not sure, but it certainly results in Ralph's death. The book is correct here about mixing chemicals being a terrible idea, and it really can kill you. All 4 animatronics show human intelligence, and they are all present to hold off on killing Ralph when he makes the night 5 call to Coppelia. It's revealed by Bronwen's message that they all want to escape the pizzeria, or prevent Ralph from leaving. It seems they'd be okay with either or, because if they did go through with the escape plan after getting Ralph, I don't think FNAF 1 would have gone how it did. All of this applies to Freddy, but he doesn't have much else in common with Bonnie, Foxy, and Chica. For one, Freddy seems to have more abilities than the others. A lot of the ways he affects Ralph are mental and can be done from a distance. The other animatronics seem afraid of Freddy. This seems to be for good reason, as if you throw Carl into the vent to distract Chica instead of the hall, Freddy is revealed to be in the vent and destroys the cupcake. Other animatronics can have their expressions described as murderous or angry, but Freddy's is different. He's described on one occasion as having vacant black eyes, and on another his glowing white eyes and mouth are compared to a demented jack-o'-lantern. I mentioned that Foxy was crueler than Chica and Bonnie, but there's a reason I left Freddy out. Freddy is just as capable of physically murdering Ralph as the others, but that's not the only thing he might do. Freddy can torment Ralph in a few different ways. One of these is showing up to Ralph's home while he's at work and having Coppelia call Ralph so that he knows they're there. Another is causing Ralph to become paranoid for the rest of his life, unable to be sure what's real. He can even swap bodies with Ralph. That might sound wild, but Ralph can experience many paranormal events throughout this book. Some of them confirm old theories, while others just feel like callbacks to key events. Freddy's ability to mess with Ralph's mind is clearly supernatural. Ralph can also hear the sounds of children and garbled whispers throughout the building. Garbled whispers are always accompanied by the "it's me" motif, but we encounter the phrase outside of just those garbled whispers. As Bronwen dies and her spirit seems to become a part of whatever is happening with Golden Freddy, she says it. And Freddy says it to Ralph on page 205 when he calls you from your house. It's specifically mentioned that it's Freddy's voice on the phone. You might say that perhaps Golden Freddy just sounds the same as regular Freddy, but on page 220, as you get into the star ending, we see Golden Freddy. Ralph describes the suit like so. It looks like Freddy Fazbear, but his fur is lighter, more golden, and he has no eyes. He doesn't, however, sound like Freddy. We hear the sound of children from him, and his voice is described as warped and garbled. Much different from the voice Ralph hears during that phone call, solidifying the fact that it was Freddy who said it on the phone. Golden Freddy seems to have infected a lot of the building. Garbled whispers come from a bathroom stall where Ralph finds "it's me" written on the door. The phrase can appear on the sign in Pirate Cove in FNAF 1. The suit is certainly backstage. Golden Freddy appears to Ralph on the stage and can show up in the office in FNAF 1. Is it possible that the regular Freddy animatronic has kind of been infected by Golden Freddy in a way? Or were we just wrong to think of them as wholly separate beings? Is that where Freddy's ability to invade the mind comes from? Could that be why the other animatronics act afraid of Freddy? They don't want to lose themselves to Golden Freddy's influence? Ralph refers to the suit Bronwen is inside of as specifically a Freddy suit from the Fredbear days, and we know it's the same suit because of Bronwen's voice coming into Ralph's mind when Golden Freddy invades it. He also gets the idea in his head that Freddy can teleport, another thing that we had ascribed only to Golden Freddy. Freddy being angrier and crueler than the other animatronics also aligns with his being tied to a more vengeful spirit. It's possible that parts from Golden Freddy have been used to repair Freddy, perhaps bringing over a piece of the vengeful spirit that influences the one that we know should be in Freddy. That could probably grant the abilities we see Freddy using. Additionally, we learn that Freddy is connected to the poster shifting in FNAF 1. Apparently, he uses it as a distraction tactic. More evidence of intelligence and premeditation. Bronwen's message, and therefore the star ending, are gated behind finding a series of secret objects. Specific actions must be done each night to get that object, some of which seem risky or downright dumb. It's the only way to get this ending, however, because if you haven't found the ID card, the lighter, the ring, and the ticket, then you won't have the code for the voicemail. We'll talk about these items more in a minute, but first let's look at what can happen when you get to the end of Night 5 without the code. One option is to abandon the voicemail system and just live. walk out at 6 a.m., say farewell to the animatronics, and go on to try to live a normal life. That's not the most interesting one, however. The other options are trying random codes, trying 1987, or trying 1983. All of these do end in a game over. While Ralph eventually does manage to find the right code and hear the beginning of Bronwen's message with the random codes, he just wasn't focused enough on his own survival. Choosing 1987 will have Ralph think the classic line, "It's amazing that the human body can live without the frontal lobe." The machine will glitch out a bit and give the incorrect passcode response in reverse. Ralph then keys it in backwards, 7891. It plays the Night 5 call from FNAF 2. Is this confirmation that the FNAF 2 guard, Jeremy, was the victim? Choosing 1983 treats Ralph to the audio of the events of the bite of 83. After hearing the bite itself happen, Ralph hangs up the phone. Unfortunately for him, he can still hear a child crying. When he turns around to check, he gets crunched, and we're left wondering exactly what he saw. These are just 2 of the references to these important pieces of the lore. In total, there are 4 references to the bite of 87 and 2 to the bite of 83. The other bite of 83 reference is on page 62, where Ralph apparently shudders after remembering, quote, "the last time a kid found his way on stage during a performance." This really makes it seem like he was present for the incident. The bite of 87 is referenced on pages 14, 29, and 166. On 166, we learn that after the bite, staff tried to share tips on how to deal with the animatronics if they attacked again. Ralph was awarded Employee of the Month, again, for putting a stop to the rumors. On page 29, we learn that one of Ralph's lines from a previous training tape, "You can't spell team without M and E," was being twisted into something morbid by other employees after the bite of 87. "You can't spell team without MEAT." Finally, on page 14, Ralph is contemplating the old days before the bite, and how the franchise is doing poorly because of bad press from the bite of 87 and rumors about missing kids. He thinks about how the victim of the bite apparently doesn't talk anymore or do much else. With this description of the state of the victim, the Help Wanted 2 player character can't be the victim of the bite, as some theorize. The victim wouldn't have been able to do any of the things we accomplish in that game. I checked pages 87 and 83 for references as well, but the only thing on 87 is Ralph hearing a child's disembodied laugh. Page 83 is a trap to catch cheaters that claim to have a master key during the choice on page 80, an item that simply doesn't exist in the book. While Ralph may not be able to find a master key, he can find plenty of other stuff. Some life-saving, some deadly. He also makes some interesting observations about his environment. I won't mention every item in the book, but we will be going through those necessary for the star ending. While tidying up in the office at the end of night 1, you're presented with the option to investigate the poster hanging in the office. Upon closer inspection, there's something behind Freddy's nose. Ralph boops the bear's nose, eliciting a honk, and something falls from behind the poster. After Ralph fishes it out from behind the desk, it's revealed to be an ID card. Apparently, the face and name are scratched out on the card, and it's been quite some time since the company last issued any of these. This card becomes useful on the next night. Ralph notices that Bonnie's head is off on the dining area camera, and when you get to the dining area, Ralph will notice the doors to the party rooms are closed when they were open on the cameras. You can choose to investigate the party rooms instead of immediately picking up Bonnie's head. Party room 1 looks normal, and Ralph reminisces for a moment about a time when being at Freddy's felt happy, before the sound of animatronic footsteps snaps him back to reality. He can choose to stay hiding in Party Room 1 or to slip into Party Room 2. If he goes to Party Room 2, the only way he can get in is with the ID card. Inside of Party Room 2, things look pretty much the same as Party Room 1, with just a slightly different pattern on the decorations and a window to set it apart. Ralph notices one of the party hats on the table is slightly out of alignment, and when he goes to realign it, he finds a Zippo underneath. He pockets the lighter and goes back out to get through the rest of the night. Like the ID card, we won't use the lighter until tomorrow. On night 3, the big problem is all of the definitely not blood in party room 2, coupled with the window being busted out. You'll need to choose to board up the window before cleaning the blood, and then to visit the security office before returning to clean up the tomato sauce on the floor. This will give you the option to check the kitchen, and if you do, Ralph finds a cupcake with a candle. When he hears footsteps approaching, he can light the candle on the cupcake before he hides. Chica comes into the kitchen and seems mesmerized at the sight of it. Something overcomes Ralph and he sings happy birthday while she stares. When he needs a name to complete the song, the name Susie pops into his head, so he uses it. This elicits a large reaction from Chica, who screams and smashes the cupcake before running away wailing. Ralph examines the remains of the cupcake and finds a gold ring, which, I bet you can guess by now, won't be useful until tomorrow. On night 4, the big issue is that the lights are on and the animatronics are having a party in the dining area. This party includes breaking a bunch of stuff. If you make the seemingly terrible decision of trying to go through the room that they are in and pick the correct side of the room to sneak through, you can duck into Pirate's Cove, since Foxy is out in the dining area. Interestingly, these don't send you to the correct pages, at least in my book. Choosing right sends you to a page that claims Ralph is on the left, and choosing left claims he's on the right. Either way, get into the cove. Ralph will find an old-timey scale that's out of balance. The way to bring it back into balance is with the ring. Placing the ring on the scale plays a recording of cheering kids and dispenses a ticket. A Fredbear's Family Diner ticket, with some totally not blood on it. On the back in ink that looks recent are the numbers 2014. This is the voicemail code. If you have the ticket, Ralph will try the number on the back. This sends you home to your daughter with the option to come back for night 6. Night 6 is when you can find the bonus item, Bronwen's mobile phone. This will come with you if you decide to play again after the star ending. It unlocks access to multiple Easter eggs on a replay and can save your life in several ways. One of these Easter eggs is during night 3. On page 98, after cleaning up the blood in the party room, you can use the phone to distract the animatronics. The final number Ralph calls in the sequence leads to backstage where, presumably, Bronwen's body is already in the suit. The call gets answered, and Ralph hears static and children laughing before the line goes dead and the words "save them" appear on the phone screen. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that Ralph can make some interesting observations about his environment. On page 54, for example, he notes that the decorations appear completely untouched in the dining area, despite no one mentioning anything about the place not opening. On 94, Ralph can also find the newspaper clipping about the missing children's incident on the floor in the supply closet. On 105, he contemplates Freddy's music box, and thinks about, in present tense, the music box at the prize counter. Could this mean the puppet is still there? That this is the same building? Or is this just an Easter egg that means nothing? If the location of the games isn't the same, I feel like they must at least be connected. And how would they be connected? Well, on pages 125, 126, and 128, we learn some interesting things about the ventilation system at Freddy's. There's at least one body, which Ralph finds an event that shouldn't even exist when he's en route to the breaker room on 128. Perhaps it's a reference to Hand Unit's story about a body being found in a vent? Or maybe to the story 1:35 a.m. This isn't the only vent Ralph could end up in that seems to leave the span of the building. 125 and 126 show Ralph becoming hopelessly lost in the network of vents. Page 125 reads, "The layout doesn't make any sense. Some branches lead to dead ends for no discernible reason, while others let out into dusty rooms you don't even recognize. It seems like whole sections of the building have been closed off over the years, or perhaps they're expansions that were abandoned before completion." At this point, if you haven't gotten the phone, the only option is to push on to page 126, which states, "You crawl and crawl and crawl until you're too tired to crawl anymore. Haven't you been in here for days? The restaurant must have opened by now, but you haven't heard any people. And they must not hear you either." This isn't a case of time dilation, as Ralph seems to die of thirst inside the expansive network of vents, unable to find his way back, something that takes approximately 3 days. Could this network of vents connect to sister location? Could Fredbear's family diner or the FNAF 2 location be lying, untouched for years, connected to this ventilation system? How could these vents go on long enough for Ralph to have died of thirst within them? The amount of ground a person could cover in that time frame is far larger than any restaurant should be. The incongruity of the internal size versus the external size would have been far too obvious. These vents have to have at some point led Ralph underground, right? The implications of this book are far from having been fully explored. The details within have the potential to change our understanding of this franchise, and I invite you to join me in trying to figure out exactly what they mean. Leave your theories in the comments if you feel so inclined. I read every single one of them. Or feel free to join the Discord server and share your thoughts there. With that said, I want to say thank you to my channel members, Bullsfrog and Embrisk. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join our Discord. I'll see you guys in the next one,
and have a fazerific day!
And hey, if you stuck around until the end of this much longer than normal video, thanks.